For more now on the significance of this deal, we're joined by Iran political analyst Ali Alizadeh. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Extraordinary to see those scenes of the negotiators going back to Tehran to this hero's welcome, almost like pop stars. Just explain who they are, who makes up that team.
In the head of that team is Javad Zarif, the man who was basically Iran's ambassador in United Nations, someone who is, I can say he's somehow politically brought up in United States. He's been living in United States, studying there before revolution and after revolution, very familiar with international diplomatic language. He can basically connect and explain himself and what he's like representing to American and all other Western countries. Very different from the previous team, Mr. Jalili, kind of a very Puritan hardliners who had spent lots of time during Iran and Iraq war. And basically he wasn't in the diplomatic framework. The stories tell us that he had left the meetings few times and he was very difficult to be pleased. He wasn't there to basically negotiate. He was there to make speeches, ideological speeches. A scene which I think tell us in a very metaphoric way. Mr. Fabius, French foreign minister, became a slightly of a hated figure inside Iran for the last few weeks. And at the end of a Geneva talk, Zarif went and hugged him.
It was an awkward hug, but it was a hug, I guess.
It's an important moment because Iranians are unfamiliar with seeing diplomacy, and that's diplomacy. You fight with someone, but then you hug them and you make up with them.
And that's what's interesting here, because we're so caught up in the negotiations between the West and Iran. But what exactly was that team playing to in Iran? Where was the delicacy there?
Because, first of all, Mr. Rouhani was elected with the promise that he will solve the problem of sanctions and also normalizing the relationship with the international community. The window for that is not unlimited. Mr. Rouhani was very, very much insistent from day one after election that he's there to negotiate. He said in his inauguration that he's not there to waste time. The dialogue between Iran and the West is not to buy time, because one of the rumors was Iranians are only there to buy time to finally make the weapon. And he has shown the real will, that they are there to make real deal. And Mr. Zarif said yesterday that immediately after the interim deal was finished, they are ready to work on the permanent deal.
And what they've shown is that there's a mainstream that is interested in this type of negotiation, when externally we often just see the view of the hardliners. So how are the hardliners handling this there? And the supreme leader, how's he dealing with it?
Okay, let's look back at the election. What happened in the election? And after 8 years of Mr. Ahmadinejad, after 4 years of sanctions, and what happened in 2009 election in Iran, the rift between different factions of elite became wider and wider. And in the election campaign, we saw the real fight between different factions. The criticism of Ahmadinejad and Mr. Jalili, the previous head, didn't come only from Rouhani. It came from people very close to Supreme Leader. They were very unhappy about the way that the previous team was handling the negotiation. The election and the fact that Rouhani was elected was somehow was made possible by the green light from the Supreme Leader. In September, Supreme Leader gave his speech, famous speech about heroic flexibility, which was a green light to diplomacy. And also recently, 2 days ago, he called the negotiation in Geneva a success. That's why the Supreme Leader is part of the team, but he wants to have his cake and eat it. He wants to be both part of the negotiation team, and also he wants to keep his stance as the ideological leader, which somehow prevent his followers from falling down.